Growing up, I always knew Amanda was the favorite. She was the golden child, the one my parents held up as a shining example of success. 3 years older than me, she had always been the overachiever, the straight-A student, the homecoming queen, the one who could do no wrong. I wasn't necessarily a failure, but next to Amanda, I was invisible. Things only got worse when Amanda married Jonathan. He was 38, wealthy, and came from old money. They met at some charity gala, one of those events where people dress in designer clothes and pretend they care about struggling communities. Amanda had always dreamed of a life like that, and Jonathan was her ticket in. Once they got married, she transformed into a completely different person. Amanda had always been confident, but now she was unbearable. She looked down on me as if I were some sort of stray dog she pitted but wouldn't let into her house. Every time we met, she would find a way to mock my life. I was 30, single, working a perfectly normal but unglamorous job in marketing. To Amanda, that was failure. She acted like working for a living was beneath her, like I was some kind of peasant who hadn't figured out the right way to live. At family gatherings, she made a show of talking about her life. It wasn't just casual conversation. It was a performance. She would dramatically sigh about the struggles of choosing between a villa in Italy or a penthouse in New York. She would mention, in an offhand way, that she had spent $30,000 on a single handbag, as if that was a completely reasonable expense. She loved watching my reaction, waiting for the moment I looked uncomfortable or embarrassed. Then, with a smug smile, she would turn to her parents, expecting their approval. And she got it. Every single time. My parents adored Amanda. To them, she was proof that they had raised a successful daughter. They loved to brag about her accomplishments, her rich husband, her luxurious lifestyle, the fact that she never had to work a day in her life. Meanwhile, I was just there. No matter what I did, it was never enough. One Christmas, Amanda outdid herself. She arrived at our parents' house in a brand new Rolls-Royce, stepping out in a designer dress with diamonds dripping from her ears. She made sure to let everyone know that Jonathan had surprised her with the car, just because. She then handed out gifts, expensive ones, the kind designed to make people feel small. Our mother got a diamond bracelet. Our father, an expensive watch. And then she turned to me. "I got you something too, Laura," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. She handed me a box, and for a moment, I stupidly thought she might have actually put some thought into it. Maybe a nice book, a small luxury item, something normal. But no. Inside the box was a cheap-looking keychain. A keychain. It wasn't even a designer keychain. Just a plain, metallic one with a tiny engraving of a mansion on it. I stared at it in disbelief while Amanda beamed at me. "It's from a luxury real estate agency," she explained. "It's a symbol. Maybe one day you'll have a real key to a house like mine." Our mother laughed. Our father chuckled. I wanted to disappear. That was Amanda. Every gift, every comment, every action was designed to remind me that she was better than me, that I would never catch up. But things took a turn when Amanda made a mistake. A big one. Jonathan had always been charming, but I never trusted him. There was something off about him, something that felt calculated. He was generous with gifts, but only in a way that made people feel indebted to him. He loved showing off his wealth, but there was something hollow behind his smile. I noticed that he rarely let Amanda speak without correcting her, and sometimes, in moments when he thought no one was looking, his face twisted into something cruel. Then the news broke. It started as a rumor, a whisper among the elite that Jonathan's business wasn't as stable as he made it seem. Within a few weeks, it turned into a full-blown scandal. Jonathan had been involved in some shady dealings, fraud, tax evasion, maybe even money laundering. He had been using his business as a front for illegal activity, and it was all coming crashing down. Amanda tried to act like everything was fine, but it wasn't. Their assets were frozen. Their house, the cars, the jewelry, everything was under investigation. The media had a field day with it. Amanda, the woman who had spent years looking down on everyone, was suddenly the subject of pity and ridicule. And just like that, my parents' golden child wasn't so golden anymore. I thought maybe this would humble her. Maybe for once in her life, she would see how it felt to struggle. But Amanda wasn't built like that. Instead, she turned to me. I hadn't spoken to her much since the scandal broke, but one evening, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. She was dressed down. No diamonds, no designer clothes, just a simple sweater and jeans. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then she opened her mouth. "Laura, I need your help." I raised an eyebrow. "Help with what?" She sighed dramatically. "You have a stable job. A decent apartment. I just need a place to stay for a little while, just until we sort things out." I stared at her. She wasn't asking. She was expecting. "Amanda, are you serious?" I said, barely able to contain my disbelief. "After everything? You want me to just open my home to you?" She tilted her head, as if genuinely confused. "Well, yes. I mean, you're my sister. Family helps each other." I almost laughed. "You mean the same way you've helped me all these years? The way you've mocked me, belittled me, treated me like garbage? And now that you have nothing, you want my help?" She blinked. "Laura, come on. That was just teasing. You know I never meant any harm." I shook my head. "No, Amanda. You don't get to rewrite history just because you need something now." For the first time in her life, Amanda looked genuinely stunned. Like she couldn't comprehend that someone was telling her no. I don't have anywhere else to go, she said, her voice quieter now. I shrugged. That's not my problem. And for the first time, Amanda realized, really realized, that she wasn't above me anymore. She left that night, and I didn't hear from her again for a long time. My parents tried to guilt-trip me, of course, but I didn't care. Amanda had spent years making sure I knew my place. Now, she finally knew hers. After years of being treated like I was nothing, something inside me finally snapped. Maybe it was Amanda's smug face at Christmas, the way she had tossed that keychain at me like I was some charity case. Maybe it was my parents' constant reminders that I was the family disappointment. Or maybe it was just the exhaustion of feeling inferior all the time. Whatever it was, I made a decision that night. I was done playing the role Amanda had assigned me. I didn't want to be just Laura the underachiever anymore. I wanted out. Out of this cycle of comparison. Out of this feeling that I would always be second best. And if Amanda's version of success was about wealth and power, then fine, I would create my own. I wasn't stupid. I knew that getting ahead wouldn't be easy. I had a marketing job that paid okay but not great, and after rent and bills, there wasn't much left to play with. But I also had one thing Amanda didn't, hunger. Real hunger. Not the kind she faked when she couldn't decide between a Versace dress and a Chanel bag, but the kind that made me work harder than anyone else in the room. I started small. At night, after work, I spent hours researching freelance opportunities. I studied copywriting, social media management, even basic graphic design. I took online courses, many of them free, and I learned fast. Within a month, I had landed my first freelance gig, writing product descriptions for an e-commerce store. The pay was terrible, but I didn't care. It was a start. Soon, I was working every spare second I had. Mornings before work, lunch breaks, late nights, I didn't stop. I built a portfolio, got better clients, raised my rates. I learned about passive income, about investments. I opened a brokerage account, started putting my extra money into stocks and ETFs. I studied real estate investment, researched side hustles, anything that could build financial stability. By month 3, my freelance income had officially surpassed my day job salary. By month 6, I was making double. I didn't tell anyone. Not my parents, not Amanda. No one knew what I was doing, and that's exactly how I wanted it. I wasn't interested in their approval. I was interested in my own freedom. But Amanda could sense it. She didn't know the details, but she felt the shift. It started with small things. The way I no longer seemed uncomfortable when she talked about money. The way I stopped reacting to her jabs. She tried to get under my skin like she always had, but for the first time in my life, I was untouchable. And that drove her crazy. One evening, at yet another painful family dinner, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You seem different," she said, her eyes scanning me like she was searching for cracks. "New clothes, fresh nails, even a new bag. Finally treating yourself, Laura?" I shrugged. "I guess." She narrowed her eyes. "Jonathan and I were just talking about how important it is to invest wisely. We know so many people who think they're doing well, but they have no real wealth. You're not, wasting your money, are you?" I almost laughed. Amanda was trying to play the role of the wise financial expert when, just months ago, she had been bragging about spending $30,000 on a handbag. And now, after her little financial disaster with Jonathan, she wanted to act like she was some money guru? I just smiled. "Don't worry about me, Amanda. I'm doing fine." That irritated her. I could see it in the way her lips tightened, in the way she crossed her arms and tilted her head like she was trying to find a weak spot. She said, her voice dripping with fake concern, "money can be tricky. Some people think they have it all figured out, but they don't. I'd hate to see you make bad choices." I met her gaze, steady and unbothered. "I think I'll manage." That was the moment she realized. For the first time in her life, she wasn't above me anymore. And she hated it. But the real fireworks came later. One night, I got an unexpected call. It was Daniel, one of Jonathan's former business associates. I had met him a few times at family events, tall, sharp-dressed, with an easy confidence that made people listen when he spoke. But this time, his voice was serious. "Laura," he said, "I need to warn you about something." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "I don't know what your sister and Jonathan have been telling you, but things are worse than they seem. A lot worse." I frowned. "I know about the fraud case. The money laundering rumors." Daniel exhaled sharply. "Yeah, well, those rumors? They're true. And Jonathan is in deep. His assets aren't just frozen, they're being seized. His lawyers are trying to negotiate, but if he doesn't find a way to pay back what he stole, he's going to prison. And Amanda, she's not innocent, Laura. She knew." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Amanda knew? She didn't just know. She was involved. Maybe not directly, but enough that if this thing blows up, she won't walk away clean. I gripped the phone tighter. "Why are you telling me this?" Daniel hesitated. "Because I like you, Laura. You're not like them. And I thought you deserved to know before it's too late." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stood there, gripping my phone, my mind racing. Amanda had spent years making me feel small. She had treated me like a failure, like I would never amount to anything. But now I had the power. And she had no idea. Amanda's world didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled piece by piece, like a designer dress slowly coming apart at the seams. At first, She pretended nothing was wrong, brushing off the early warning signs with the same arrogance she had always carried. But cracks were forming, and soon, she wouldn't be able to hide them. It started with the cancelled trips. Amanda had been planning a summer in St. Tropez, a month-long stay in a private villa overlooking the Mediterranean. It was supposed to be effortless, another luxurious getaway where she could drink champagne by the pool and post filtered photos with captions like "living my best life." But then suddenly, Jonathan told her they couldn't go. "Too many financial complications right now," he had said over dinner. "We need to cut back on unnecessary expenses." Amanda had laughed, thinking he was joking. Jonathan didn't cut back. But when she realized he was serious, her expression changed. "You're canceling our trip?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Since when do we cut back?" Jonathan exhaled, clearly annoyed. "Amanda, we have bigger concerns right now. This isn't about you." That was the first time she truly felt the shift. Then came the fights. They weren't the normal passive-aggressive jabs she and Jonathan used to throw at each other. No, these were real, ugly fights. Late-night shouting matches behind closed doors, words laced with resentment and blame. Amanda started noticing Jonathan making offhand remarks about her spending, how much she shopped, how much she spent on pointless things. As if he hadn't spent their entire marriage encouraging her to be the trophy wife with a bottomless appetite for wealth. But the final blow? That came when Jonathan cut off her access to their accounts. She had gone to her favorite boutique, ready to swipe her platinum card for a $12,000 dress. The cashier, a petite blonde named Elise who always fawned over Amanda's purchases, ran the card once. Then again. Then a third time, each attempt followed by an increasingly awkward smile. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Caldwell," Elise finally said, lowering her voice. "Your card has been declined." Amanda frowned, snatching the card back. "That's ridiculous. Try this one." She handed over another, a different card, and watched as Elise hesitated before running it through. The same result. Declined. Heat rose up Amanda's neck. She could feel the judgmental stares of other shoppers, women she had once looked down on. "There must be a mistake," she snapped, grabbing her phone. She dialed Jonathan, barely containing her rage when he answered. "My cards aren't working," she said through clenched teeth. "Fix it." There was a pause. "I froze them." For a moment, Amanda thought she had misheard. "What?" Jonathan sighed, his voice devoid of patience. "I've cut off your access, Amanda. You spend too much, and right now we need control over our finances." Amanda felt a rush of panic, an unfamiliar, suffocating feeling. "My spending? Jonathan, are you serious? I've always spent exactly how you wanted me to. You loved it when I—" "Well, things have changed," he interrupted. "You'll get an allowance. A reasonable one. But you're not draining my accounts anymore." And just like that, Amanda's perfect world shattered. Her lavish lifestyle wasn't hers. It was Jonathan's. The money, the power, the security, none of it had ever truly belonged to her. And now, without access to his wealth, she was nobody. Meanwhile, my life had never been better. I had spent months quietly building my fortune, working every hour I could, making smart investments. And now, I had done something I never thought possible. I bought my own apartment. A $750,000 luxury apartment in the heart of the city. No loans, no assistance, just my own hard-earned money. The day I got the keys, I stood in the middle of my new living room, staring out at the skyline, letting it sink in. This was mine. Not a gift from a rich husband. Not something I had to beg for. Mine. And Amanda? She had no idea. Not yet. At first, Amanda did what she always did, pretended. She walked into family dinners with her head held high, still wearing designer clothes, though noticeably older pieces, still ordering the most expensive wine on the menu, still acting as if nothing had changed. She spoke about financial adjustments like they were her decision, laughing off canceled vacations and choosing to be more frugal. I almost admired her commitment to the delusion. But I saw through it. I saw the desperation in the way she clung to her remaining luxuries, the way her jewelry selection started shrinking, how her nails, once always professionally manicured, were now slightly chipped at the edges. Jonathan's patience with her had worn thin. Their fights had gone from quiet tension to outright hostility. The final sign came when I visited my parents' house for dinner and noticed Amanda had moved back in. I raised an eyebrow when I saw her suitcases in the hallway. "Back home?" I asked, my tone neutral. Amanda scoffed. "Just for a little while. Jonathan and I agreed we needed space." Translation: Jonathan had enough of her and kicked her out. Still, she kept up the act. But then slowly, she started testing the waters, dropping hints about family support. "You know, Laura," she said one evening as we sat awkwardly in my parents' living room, "family is supposed to help each other. I've always been there for you." I nearly choked on my drink. "You've been there for me?" I repeated. "Amanda, when exactly have you ever supported me?" She gave a tight-lipped smile, the kind that barely masked her irritation. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I mean in the sense that we're family. And now that you're doing well, maybe you can." "No." Her face twitched. "You don't even know what I was going to say." "I do," I said simply. "And the answer is no." I watched as she struggled to compose herself. "It's not like I'm asking for much," she finally said, voice controlled. "Just a little help. A small loan. Temporary." I stared at her, unimpressed. "You mean the way Jonathan used to help you? Giving you money so you could act like a queen while looking down on everyone else. Amanda's nostrils flared. That's not fair. Oh, it's very fair. She opened her mouth, ready to argue, but I cut her off. I don't owe you anything, Amanda. You made your choices and I made mine. I worked for what I have. You married for it. Her mask cracked for just a second. A flicker of pure, seething resentment. Then she stood up abruptly. Forget it. I watched as she stormed out, and for a moment, I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Miss Reynolds, a serious voice said through the phone. This is Stephen Clark from First National Bank. We need to verify some recent loan activity on your account. I frowned. Loan activity? I haven't applied for any loans. A brief pause. Then, ma'am, we have an application in your name for a personal loan of $100,000. Submitted just 3 days ago. My stomach dropped. Excuse me, I said sharply. I never applied for that. There was another pause, then a shift in tone. Miss Reynolds, this application included all of your personal details, your social security number, employment information, and even your signature. I did not sign anything, I snapped. I need you to cancel it immediately. We've already flagged it for fraud, he reassured me. But I'd strongly suggest filing a police report. This wasn't just an attempt. It was processed up until final approval. Someone had access to everything. I already knew who it was. Amanda. I hung up, shaking with rage. My hands clenched so tightly around my phone I thought it might crack. She hadn't just tried to manipulate me. She had stolen from me. I didn't hesitate. I went straight to the police. Filing a fraud report was simple. I provided the bank details, my identification, and within an hour, an investigation was underway. The detective, Officer Malone, took one look at the evidence and said, "This is bad. If this gets prosecuted, we're talking felony-level fraud." Good. But what I wasn't prepared for was my parents' reaction. The moment they found out, my mother called me, her voice shrill with panic. "Laura, what have you done?" I blinked. What have I done? Amanda stole my identity. She tried to take out a loan in my name. She made a mistake, my mother said, her voice trembling. But calling the police? You're destroying her life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was about to steal $100,000 from me, Mom. And I'm the bad guy. She's your sister. My father chimed in, his tone heavy with disappointment. Families don't turn on each other over money. I let out a bitter laugh. Funny. Because Amanda had no problem turning on me when she was spending Jonathan's money and treating me like garbage. She's desperate, Laura, my mother snapped. She was scared. You should have just helped her. Help her? I gritted my teeth, rage bubbling under my skin. You mean the way she helped me all these years? By mocking me? By rubbing her wealth in my face? By making sure I always felt less than? Silence. Then my mother's voice, cold and unforgiving. I hope you're happy, Laura. I hope ruining your sister makes you feel powerful. I inhaled sharply, the finality of her words sinking in. Then I exhaled. Because for the first time I didn't care. Amanda had made her choices. And now, she would finally face the consequences. Amanda's downfall didn't happen overnight, but it was inevitable. At first, she pretended that nothing had changed, still walking into rooms with her head held high, forcing that same smug smile she had always worn, still talking as if she were the wealthiest woman in the family, as if she were still untouchable. But cracks began to form in her carefully constructed image, and no matter how much she tried to cover them, the truth began seeping through. At family gatherings, she still spoke about luxury, but now her stories were about the past rather than the present. She talked about extravagant vacations she had taken the year before, about designer collections she had once owned, about parties she had attended with elite guests whose names she casually dropped into conversations, but there were no new purchases, no new trips, no new invitations. Everything about her was outdated, and she knew it. It wasn't long before she began hinting at the idea of family support, though at first, she tried to be subtle. She would say things like, "Family is supposed to lift each other up in difficult times," with a wistful sigh, her gaze lingering on me, expecting me to take the bait. I ignored her completely, refusing to acknowledge the manipulation. A week later, she tried again, but this time, she was bolder. She mentioned that Jonathan was being difficult, and implied that she just needed a little financial cushion to get her through the rough patch. Again, I didn't respond the way she wanted. Then she dropped all pretense. One afternoon, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "I know you've been doing well for yourself. You're living comfortably, aren't you? It's inspiring. Maybe you could, help your big sister out." Her voice was laced with artificial sweetness, but I could hear the desperation underneath it. I didn't hesitate for a second before responding, "Amanda, I am not your bank." For a moment, she looked as if she had been physically struck. Her mouth opened, then closed, as if she were trying to compose herself, trying to find a way to twist the situation in her favor. But I had caught her off guard. The expression on her face was unfamiliar. She wasn't used to being told no. I could see the anger bubbling beneath her forced smile, and when she finally spoke, her voice was sharp, cutting. "You're so selfish," she spat, her eyes narrowing. "After everything I've done for you." But I didn't even let her finish. I laughed, shaking my head, before replying, "Everything you've done for me? You spent years treating me like I was nothing, belittling me, mocking my life. You wouldn't help me if our positions were reversed. Her lips pressed into a thin, furious line. You don't understand what I'm going through, she snapped, but I just gave her a pointed look before replying, no, but you never cared what I was going through either. That was the moment I saw the realization hit her. She wasn't in control anymore. Amanda might have walked away from that conversation in defeat, but she wasn't the type to give up easily. When manipulation failed, she resorted to something far worse. A week after that confrontation, I was sitting at my desk when I received a notification on my phone. It was an alert from my bank about a loan application, a massive request for a $100,000 personal loan. My stomach immediately dropped. I hadn't applied for any loan. My heart started pounding as I checked the details, and as I read through the information, a cold realization settled in. The application had been submitted online, using my personal details, my social security number, my financial history, my credit. But the email attached to the application wasn't mine. It was Amanda's. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the screen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Amanda had actually stolen my identity. She had attempted to take out a massive loan under my name, assuming that either I would never notice or if I did, I wouldn't dare report her. She must have thought that I would let her get away with it because, in her mind, she was still the superior one, the golden child, the sister who always won. But she had underestimated me. Without a second thought, I called my bank, and within minutes, the fraud investigation was underway. They immediately flagged the loan request, froze the transaction, and launched a deeper review. Then I went straight to the police. Amanda received a call from law enforcement 2 days later, and that was when all hell broke loose. My parents called me furious, their voices filled with disbelief and anger, but not at Amanda, at me. My mother shrieked through the phone demanding, Laura, how could you? She's your sister. You actually reported her to the police? Over a misunderstanding. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head even though she couldn't see me. A misunderstanding? I repeated, my voice calm but ice cold. She stole my personal information and tried to commit fraud. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. My father's voice cut in, deep and filled with disappointment. You should have handled this privately, Laura, he said. She was desperate. You should have talked to her instead of humiliating her like this. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. My parents weren't angry at Amanda for what she had done. They weren't disgusted by the fact that their eldest daughter had tried to steal from their youngest. No, they were angry at me for standing up for myself. They were angry that I had held Amanda accountable for her actions. And that was when it finally hit me. Nothing I ever did would change the way they saw her. No matter what she did, they would always excuse her. No matter how successful I became, I would never be enough for them. I was done. Completely and utterly done. That was the last time I ever spoke to my parents. I cut them off entirely, blocked Amanda's number, and removed them from my life like a weight I should have dropped years ago. Without them, I felt something I had never experienced before, complete freedom. Without their judgment, without Amanda's cruel comparisons, without the toxic cycle of always being treated like I was second best, I thrived. I expanded my investments, grew my wealth, and within a year, I had reached a milestone I once thought was impossible. I had officially become a millionaire. Not because of luck, not because of inheritance, and certainly not because of manipulation. I had done it through my own intelligence, my own ambition, my own relentless drive. While I spent my time traveling, experiencing life, and living stress-free, Amanda was scrambling. She had latched onto a new man, Oliver Hastings, a self-proclaimed tech investor who drove a flashy car and wore designer suits. But it didn't take long before the truth came out. Oliver was a fraud. His company was bankrupt, his wealth was an illusion, and he was drowning in debt. Amanda, who had once built her entire identity around the idea of being married to money, had attached herself to yet another sinking ship. And then, as expected, she reached out to me one last time. A single text appeared on my phone, pathetic in its simplicity. Laura, can we talk? I really need your help. I stared at the message for a long moment, then, without a second thought, I deleted it. No reply. No second chances. Amanda had spent her life looking down on me, stealing from me, betraying me, and now she had nothing. I, on the other hand, had everything. I had one. And this time she was never coming back.